What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Shogun, the new historical drama series on FX, streaming on Hulu. First 2 episodes out now. This show has been a long time coming. I've been following the development of the show for several years. It was announced, pre-pandemic. Very exciting. It's finally here. This show is based on the 1975 James Clavell novel and was famously previously adapted back in 1980 in one of the first kind of epic limited series of its kind, starring the great Toshiro Mifune of Akira Kurosawa fame, of course, and a redo of Shogun in the era of peak TV, in the era of massive TV spend, huge creative budgets, was of course very exciting, hence why this has been hyped up for several years. And Shogun 2024 also is awesomely stacked with amazing actors. Of course, the star of this would be Hiroyuki Sanada, arguably the most famous and celebrated Japanese actor of the last 30 years. Also have Anna Sawai in her third high-profile TV series in a row, following Pachinko and Monarch over at Apple. And we also have the great Tadanobu Asano, who I've been a big fan of for some time. Cosmo Jarvis is the one key English character. John Blackstone, notably not going to be a lead of the show in the same way the John Blackstone character was the lead of the 1980 version of Shogun. I think a updating of the priorities of the storytelling makes a lot of sense as a Japanese show, spoken primarily in Japanese, although when we have the Portuguese being spoken, they do English for us as the viewer, which I think is a nice touch. And yeah, I think Shogun has a chance to be the best show of the year. Absolutely epic premiere. This show has amazing production values. I mean, this show was filmed in Canada, but it looks exactly like you'd expect feudal Japan, 1600 Japan, to look. Absolutely amazing. They spared no expense. And when you have a stacked cast with Hiroki Sanada, Tadanobu Asano, a rising star like Anna Sawai, and I think a kind of coming out of nowhere great performance from Cosmo Jarvis, this has everything you want, because the intrigue of factions and betrayals and war, the Game of Thrones comparisons make a lot of sense. It has a lot of those Thrones qualities, and clearly they spare no expense with the production. It looks gorgeous. The period detail is there, and there's just so much intrigue. There's so much fascination, I think, with the storytelling through those first 2 episodes, that I am completely on board. And yeah, I think this could be one of the best shows of the year. And given the track record of FX, I think we should be very confident in this being a great show. So I'm very excited about Shogun. Cannot wait to continue watching this series. I think ultimately, the details of the storytelling here are coming at a really interesting time. The show is set in 1600s Japan, which that puts us only 3 years before the beginning of the Edo period, the beginning of the Tokugawa shogunate, a very famous time in Japanese history. And of course, this is still 250 years before Commodore Matthew Perry famously opens up Japan to the west, right? So, we're still way before the Meiji Restoration. I think this is a time that is well documented, but probably not as, the details are probably not as familiar with a lot of Western viewers, unless they're, big fans of Japanese history. And I'm actually kind of surprised, maybe not surprised, but the level of detail with the intrigue, I think, is really compelling through the first 2 episodes, where you have the presence of Portuguese traders, Portuguese Catholics, who are pretty entrenched as the sole European presence in Japan at this time. And Cosmo Jarvis's John Blackstone character is an Englishman sailing for the Dutch, but an Englishman who is a Protestant, of course, as an Englishman. And of course, the Protestant, Catholic, Christian violence of the time, people know. And I think the political machinations of what the Portuguese are up to in Japan, and how the various factions of Japanese leadership at the time, how they seem to think about that, pretty compelling. And of course, this situation that our Japanese characters find themselves in, where we have this regent government featuring, of course, Hiroyuki Sanada's character as Toranaga, one of the 5 regents, and his rival, Lord Yoshido, played by Takehiro Hira. And of course, there's a few other regions as well, but there's 5. And just classic like treatment, classic setup for regional conflict, succession conflict. I think you know that trope well, but we know that because it's just very compelling. There's going to be backstabbing, there's going to be betrayals, there's going to be violence. There's tons of violence in the premiere already. I think it's done very tastefully, but also this is a challenging time to be in. Right, we see beheadings. We see a guy get boiled alive in episode 1. We see someone about to commit seppuku, but they spare us of the actual stabbing, right? It's a tough time. And once the battles kick off, as have been shown in the trailers for Shogun, I mean, it's going to really pop off the screen. Very exciting. I think Cosmo Jarvis, though, as Blackstone, really surprised me. I'd known the name, like he's been around, but I hadn't really seen him do anything too much. And he's like kind of, I think, funnily being compared to like Tom Hardy in terms of appearance, maybe in terms of his vocal performance, but his performance as Blackstone, but also how that character is being clearly used by Toranaga in terms of sowing the seeds of doubt amongst the other regions who are plotting against Toranaga. Like, it's all very compelling. And of course, Blackstone seeing the opportunity to protect himself by aligning with Toranaga. Very exciting. I love what we've got from Tanobu Asano thus far as this lord in service, under Toranaga. He's an awesome actor. He's very charismatic. It's funny enough, my first memory of seeing him is in the bad 47 Ronin remake with Keanu Reeves, where he's this amazing villain character, but he's been in a lot of things, of course. They're hinting at his weak allegiances already, so I'm curious if that'll stand or if he ends up being kind of a more like pathetic character because Toranaga sees right through him. We'll see. Ishido seems like a compelling villain thus far, but I'm sure it's going to get more complicated. Anna Sawai, who I've been a fan of ever since we really started seeing her, after the kind of out of nowhere F9 debut, but then really popped off in Pachinko, starring role on Monarch last year. And this is another big showcase for her. She's very quickly becoming a huge TV actor for sure. And Sawai's character, Mariko, has a very important role as a Catholic who also speaks Portuguese and thus can be a translator for Blackstone, with Toranaga, with the others. So, yeah, I mean, I just think there's just so much richness here. There's clearly so much attention to detail, whether that's period detail, whether it's the storytelling. I think it's incredibly compelling. And yeah, I mean, I think there's just a lot of awesome moments through these first 2 episodes. I think the stuff, the boat, the boat swell where they all almost die on the journey to Osaka. I thought that was really great. Like in terms of a set piece, looked fantastic. Like the Portuguese sailor guy that Blackstone meets and his comments about Blackstone basically being an idiot, for thinking Japan's uncivilized. And he's like, hey, take a look at Osaka. Amazing moment. I thought they had some pretty tactfully done exposition in episode 2 where the priest prisoner tells Blackstone basically like a data dump on who Toranaga is, who the other regions are, like what are the political dynamics. Very smartly done to give a little bit more info to the audience that we didn't quite get all of the picture painted for us in episode 1. Overall, it's a show that treats the audience, I think, pretty smartly. I love the map scene in episode 2 where Blackstone basically draws his perception of the world and explains that to Toranaga. Of course, Japan has been largely in isolation to this point. The assassination attempt scene, very good to end episode 2. They've really done a good job of showcasing Toranaga's intelligence, his ability to see the board, see the political machinations, and be like a smooth operator in face of danger. And of course, Hiroyuki Sanada just has so much charisma, so much presence, obviously, that I think all that really lands. So yeah, overall, I mean, I have nothing but good things to say through the first 2 episodes of Shogun. This will be perhaps the event limited series of the year. I mean, I hope the ratings are great for this. They've done a pretty good job marketing it. So I just hope people check this out because this has so many of the things you want with a compelling drama series. So over the moon for Shogun. Let me know, how are you feeling about it through the first 2 episodes? What are you most looking forward to seeing through the rest of the series? And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.